going on, my creative buds? Right now, we are headed to pick up the parentals at the airport. So I thought maybe we try a little come cruise with me sort of podcast hangout and basically just talk about running a creative business, a freelance business, as well as if you are a either net new or photographer wanting to learn video. Let's talk about the basics of that, and this all comes from a conversation I had with a friend, Dylan, this morning, and he is a longtime wedding photographer, he and his wife, and he's looking to transition more into video, mainly for commercial and kind of just hedging their bets, kind of diversifying their work and their offerings, but it's funny timing. Sorry, a slash here. Funny timing because literally in the last 2 weeks I just finished a couple rounds of like a pilot with like a pilot for my course that I'm creating. So the first course that I'm thinking, this V for P sounds like a sexual innuendo, but it's videographer for photographers. So I'm aiming it at wedding photographers to start, and the idea is that these are already working wedding photographers, and so they'll likely already have the funds and the want to offer some basic basic video services. Because there are a lot of times where a wedding photographer gets an inquiry, and people are like, "Well, maybe I don't want or don't have the budget for a full wedding video, but I would like the main components recorded, basically the ceremony and the speeches." So that could be a package in itself, or you could step it up and also offer a simple highlight, which I think could easily be done too while you're shooting. So whatever you're shooting as a photographer, you're getting your shots, you quickly just take 3 to 4 seconds of that clip, and then you have all these pieces. And I always go back to Lego pieces. You're collecting a bunch of Lego pieces for you to edit and make something later on. But basically the intent of this whole thing is teaching wedding photographers the simplest way to think about video, how to get it, how to record it, how to make sure you're thinking of the beginning, middle, and ends of the scene, and then how do we wrap it up and get into the editing. So I'm still working on creating the course itself, so that it could be a standalone course, like a DIY type thing. I've just gone through it with a couple wedding photographers and one fellow, funny enough, I met on Reddit, and he wants to get into wedding videography. So I said, hey, I'm trying to do this course, like maybe you can give me some feedback and also I can help you out. So it was a nice session we had together, and answered all his questions, and all the questions he had, actually, funny enough, were answered in the slides and kind of my outline that I'm working on. So it's nice to know that we're off to a good start. We're in the right direction. So just quick plug here, I guess, if you are either wedding photographer wanting to learn basic video, so you could offer that to your clients, or if you're just any other, if you're just a photographer freelancer, you want to learn basic video, I think there's something here too. So I will create a page between the time I finish this and I post it. I'll create a page where you can just sign up to the email list, and then that way I can let you know when I have something put together, and you can check it out. Obviously, it's just to be notified, and if that's something of interest, I would love to help you out. I'm thinking 2 packages. One is sort of a DIY in the $200-$250 range. I think that sounds reasonable. And then one might be a little more, that's more comprehensive, where I can do like a full guarantee of help, like hand holding you, walking you through to, getting your first, as you do your first wedding and you get the shots, I can help you edit it once you come back from that wedding. And then also just as much help as you need until you're confident in delivering that video and getting a testimonial from the couple. And then, so until you're basically off to the races and comfortable offering a basic video package, or your money back. Maybe you get to the end of it and you're like, you know what, video is too much to do. I'd rather just do photo, or I don't enjoy video as much as I thought I would, whatever. Either way, with both my packages, I think I'll do a full money back guarantee. Like I genuinely want this to be helpful, because I know everyone and their grandma is doing courses, and it's a lot, but that is a genuine way for I think creators to make money, so I can feed my family, and then also help and put out that knowledge. So that's why I've been so hesitant putting out courses and stuff, because everyone's doing it, but I think that's why I was trying to see what had the most value. So I think this is the easiest ROI, a couple $100 if for a photographer that's already working in the wedding industry to do this. And then if they charge, say, $1,500 on their first wedding, then they've already made their money back nice and easy. So I think there was a nice ROI connection there. So plus the money back guarantee, I think there's something. Anyways, it's enough for that. I'll put together some links. You can check that out. We'll go from there. But all that to say, when Dylan was, he's like, hey, like I want to get into real estate, some real estate stuff, some commercial stuff. In essence, we're in the same city, so maybe, build a bit of like competition here, but I think that's also good because then it'll keep us on our toes. We'll all have to get better at our crafts, right? But he's like, hey, can I pick your brain about some video stuff? Because I just, he knows the the photo side very well. Just wasn't sure where to start with video. So we're on the call, we're talking through all this stuff, and I'm telling him about what I just told you, and and so he says this all sounds good, and he's going to review it. We're going to go through it once I get everything kind of set up. But he's like, where do I start? And so looking back now at our conversation, that's such a huge question because it all depends on where you're at. But so I was just thinking again, like if I'd answered again, like could I make it more concise? Because the problem is video is like, kind of there's this business jargon of hub and spoke, right? Like when you think of marketing, you could think of your website as the hub, like a wheel, right? The hub. And then all your spokes is like your content marketing, your SEO, all that, and all your efforts. But they all kind of should connect back to the site and connect within like an ecosystem, which is your marketing and your brand. And so with video, my mind went that way, and it was kind of hard to really focus on what to tell them because it is like that. It is this hub and spoke as well. Whereas like, let's say it's the camera, and the camera, you're trying to pull video out of it. You can look at kind of two models. One is camera for video. You have that because it could be the same camera for photo, but it's a different things to consider. So with, I think with photo, you're thinking of snapshots in the moment, like in this split second, in this still frame, does this tell the entire story or does it allude to something? Is there something interesting? Is the light right? Is the composition right? And then with video, you're sort of doing the same thing, but the parameters in which you work are a little more complex. It's tougher. So you're still thinking of, is this interesting? Can I create depth in this image? Is this framed right? It's all the same good stuff, but the beauty or the ease of photo in a sense is that when you shoot raw, you have a lot of latitude in your dynamic range, for example. So if something's a little too dark or a little too bright, you have more wiggle room to stretch and pull that image to your liking or to color grade it to your liking. With video, you do, but not as much. And then your constraints are even more so on the quality of your camera. I would say in this day and age, 2025, you could pick up any modern camera, and photo-wise, it'd be great. There's going to be different looks to it, but for the most part, it's going to be clean, it's going to be clear, and then it's going to be up to the kind of the eye and technique of the photographer. With video, to an extent, yes, that same kind of artistry and kind of the subjectiveness of that does still apply. But when you do jump to a better camera, there are different capabilities. Like there are more capabilities of like a better high ISO, so you have cleaner image in a super dark room or lighting conditions. Stabilization is a big one. So if you're not using a gimbal, certain cameras have better IBIS than others, certain in-body stabilization than others. There are different formats as far as like 10-bit and log, meaning it's sort of akin to the raw images you would get from a modern camera, because then it allows you to push and stretch and color grade a little bit more. But again, even at that, it's not true raw, and it's not as much range or much flexibility as you would get with photo. So you have to be more precise in camera when you're doing video. You have to make sure you're not jittery with your hands or finding a stabilization for the scene that you're trying to capture. The autofocus is different. If you're trying to track something, there's different methods of either relying on the camera, if your camera has automatic tracking, or are you focus pulling with your hands, or a LiDAR system. There's a lot. So like focus. So all this to say, sorry, let me pause myself. It's hard to explain to someone like, where do you start? So I think that's what I'm trying to do here. So I'm trying to preface like with the idea that there's a lot more balls in the air. There's a lot more components I'm considering when I'm doing video versus when I'm doing photo. Let's start with the basics, meaning the camera and basic stuff, basic tech changes or settings that you'll do. And so for the simple and easy, I always obviously recommend you go and Google this and watch other YouTube videos that go more in depth about these individual pillars or kind of verticals, because I can't get into all of it, but I'm trying to give you a quick broad brush and help you out. But start with the idea of understanding timelines and what you're editing on. So typically you're gonna edit it like in Final Cut, Premiere, that kind of thing. I personally like Final Cut Pro, very intuitive, very easy to use. And I like that's like a one-time fee and you're done. I used to edit in Premiere, but just too cumbersome and too taxing on my computer for me. I use an M1 MacBook Pro now. It's an older model, but with the Final Cut Pro runs quite smooth, and it's been great. So step one, choose the editor that you're gonna use, and then understanding the timeline of that. Typically, you're gonna choose a project, you open a timeline, it'll be either in 24 frames, or there's 30 and there's 60 here in North America. I always edit on 24, even if I shoot in camera 60 frames per second. So just know that like your timeline that you're editing in is different than the frames per second settings in your camera, because that's where a lot of the photographers are getting confused. They weren't sure what that really meant. And so again, you can research to go deeper into it, but just know that you're gonna edit in a 24 timeline. And then when you're shooting, say at a wedding, I'll shoot typically most of the day in 24 frames. And so it just has that more filmic look. It has a little bit of motion blur. There's a feeling and a look to it. And you play around. So shoot a couple clips of just you in motion, or just scene that has motion in it. So you can see 24 frames a second versus your 30 frames a second versus 60 in camera. And then from there, I would say you still have to learn the differences of like shutter angle. So basically, quick and simple, if you're doing 24 frames a second, you want to be at 48 or 50 for your shutter speed, right? And then if you're doing 60, then 120. So I'll use those two during wedding day. I'll go 24 frames a second in my camera most of the day. I go handheld all day. That's personal preference. And then moments where it's like the processional, or they're going to be doing the first kiss, or portrait sessions where I might want moments to slow down, I'll shoot in 60 frames per second. And then when we shoot in 60 frames a second, when you put in that 24 frame, FPS timeline in your editor, you would just retime it, and then it would basically slow it down twice as much, and it gives a nice, that smooth slow-mo. And so it gives you that option. Now, why wouldn't you just choose 60 frames a second and shoot all day? Well, it depends on your camera. Some cameras crop in, meaning maybe you're shooting at 24 or you're shooting at a 35 millimeter. You like that field of view because that's what your lens gives you. But then as soon as you switch to 60, it might jump into like a 1.5. So now you're looking at maybe a 35, you jump into like almost like a 50, or whatever the conversion is. But basically it's a tighter looking frame than what you wanted. And then if you're inside, it sucks, because if you wanted a wide shot, now you can't have it. So you have to make concessions sometimes. You have to choose what you want to do and knowing what your camera can do. Whereas my FX3, it doesn't crop in. So I could shoot, and I have shot 60 frames a second all day to make it simple for myself, and I've done that before. So you just have to know the limitations of your camera. The other thing is also bit rates, and just it's a larger file size. So then cards, if you don't have larger cards, or if you're using you want to use a high bit rate, then you're gonna eat up card space quite quickly. And again, on a wedding day, we want to be efficient. So again, knowing your settings and understanding how much data you're going to be burning through. Because for me, what makes me anxious on wedding days is batteries and storage. So that's why I've started using V-mounts, and I've started using 256 gigabyte cards, and I have like all day battery. I have 10 hours of data that I can burn through, and I don't have to worry about that. I just have to worry about getting the shot and making sure that and audio are good. So that's another thing that kind of in tangent there. It's like when we're doing these wedding stuff, and especially if you're doing the highlight stuff, we want to keep this as simple as possible because my photographers will be there to take photos first. We don't want to mess that up for them. We want to make the video side as simple as possible, which is why, again, it's communicating with clients that, hey, this is a highlight video, or this is just sort of this raw ceremony speech moment, nothing super cinematic, because I'll be focused on photo. So that's a separate conversation of communicating well with clients before we get into offering these packages. Yeah, so that's sort of the basics of frame rates, and that sort of, it's like understanding that component. And I was telling Dylan, you know what, just practice around the house, play around with it, and then see how each frame rate looks and what you like and what you don't like, and understanding just the look and feel of things. So that could be stage one. And there's no right or wrong here, because these are all kind of, like I said, they're all a web or a hub and spoke that interconnects, but just trying to parse it out in a way that makes sense so that he's not, well, he was inundated. I'm sure I threw a lot at him, but it's, at least you can take it in steps, How do you eat an elephant? Just a bite at a time, right? So next chunk you would do is, well, let's talk about stabilization. So when you're shooting, am I going handheld? Am I going to do a gimbal? Typically for me, I'm handheld all day on a wedding because it's more flexible. I can get the shot I need. It's just faster for me. I don't want to mess around with a gimbal and another thing that is motorized or has a battery, and that's another thing to worry about mentally for me. But I do use gimbals for real estate, for my interior design shoots. It's those times where you don't want the movement to detract from the story. And again, there are times I do use handheld in real estate or design as well, but I'm just saying in general, it's those smooth kind of pan shots, push in shots. It's those moments where, like, you're showing a space and you want the space itself to be highlighted and the viewer to really soak in what's happening. So a gimbal is great for that. The idea of handheld is, it's showing that, hey, someone's at your wedding, someone is filming it, and that's okay. It shows that, like, it could be from a POV of someone else watching you, or because my style is very very candid, very home video, it's like a cousin or a dad that has a camera, and I actually interact with my bride and groom and their people and their family and friends. So it's showing this that it's okay to have this person manning the camera. So again, just being mindful of that, like your camera movements change the feel of the video, and so that's something to note. And then from there, now we're talking about maybe your lens choices and autofocus. So just like photography, how much is in frame and your focal length and the depth and the bokeh, everything adds into the feel and the look of the image, obviously, but it's more the feeling of the image. So you make a choice. Some people just really love shallow depth of field, love nothing but primes, and they'll sacrifice switching out primes all day if they want to or have to, because they want the look of primes. I, again, try to make it simple myself, and so that I don't miss shots either. I'll do a zoom pretty much all day. I have a Sigma 28-70 on my Sonys that I use for most of the day, alongside my Tamron 20 to 40, 2.8. So that's usually for the mornings where space might be tighter. So then, but again, having the zoom is clutch in the sense of when things are happening, or I need to get punch in tighter really quick and I don't have time to switch lenses, or I don't want to encroach on a moment and ruin things or take them out of it because all of a sudden there's this guy with a camera hovering over them. It's like I'm trying to be cognizant of that, and so I have zoom lenses for those moments. Where I will bring out a prime is I'll have a 24mm 1.8 prime at the end of the night, like receptions and party time, where things are obviously darker, it's nighttime, and so that's where I'll have that prime, because I'm running around, and like in party time it's okay to get close and to get into the mix of things. So that's where I'll have that, and then that keeps that kit nice and simple. I don't have to worry about too many lenses. I'm not overthinking it. I think for what it's worth, when I was first starting, I too notice and like the look of primes, but at the end of the day, you have to also think of like what makes your job easy, and will the extra effort make a difference to the client. And I would say well, probably I would say 9 out of 10, but I was going to say actually 10 out of 10 times. I don't think anyone, no client, no couple is going to be like, oh, I wish you would have shot that with a prime. You know, that's not as crisp as a prime. Like, again, I have a nice full frame camera. Most cameras are not pretty good these days. It's clients are looking for, did you capture the memory? Did you document the good stuff? You know, that's all they want. So they're not concerned about the lenses you use as long as you get the moments. So putting it out there for what it's worth. So then you're playing around with the lenses and understanding how you shoot. A lot of people love really tight shots and details and bokeh. I myself love sort of a wideness, especially with video. With photo, I like to be in tighter to have more bokeh, but for video, I love a 24. I even love the 20 during the mornings, but I just love kind of just sitting back and like letting the scene play out. And you know, like a home video, you want to see the details of little things. And I put myself in the shoes of my clients. It's like, they're going to look at this and like they want to see the decor in their house. They want to see the family photos. And you know, while we're getting ready over here, we got the little ones being silly over here. It's like this, like Where's Waldo thing. You can always find something new every time. And so it's kind of like, that's what I think of and that's what I enjoy. So typically, if it's not a interaction between two people, I'll try to keep it pretty wide so that there's more to absorb in the scene. But that's just a choice. Do you know what I mean? And that's, as you shoot, as you do, you'll get better and you'll know what your style is or what you prefer. And that's eventually where you start to create this artistic style of yours that helps you stand out from other people. But I think all of it has to start with understanding your equipment is stage one, and then stage two is how do we tell a story and how do we capture good audio, right? Okay, now audio. So that's where things get a little more complicated because you have to know the type of audio for what you're doing. If I'm doing a real estate or a design with a design client and she's walking around explaining what they did to a place, how they renovated a place, then I've got to have either I can use a wireless mic that has a transmitter from on the subject or on the talent to my camera, or the Tascam TX660s. Those are amazing. So versatile. I use it all day at weddings and I use them in my corporate stuff too. Always is a nice backup. I rarely use the Tascam DR10L. That is a lavalier into like a recorder, into a pack. But the problem with that, it's not really a problem, but the hassle with that is that, you know, in weddings, you have to find a place to tuck it. And if you're tucking it in the inside pocket of where the groom is, he might be wearing a tight jacket, and then you have this lump, and I've put it to the back, kind of the small of the back, and then if he's wearing a tight jacket again, you see this hump kind of, you know, by his butt or by his small of his back, and it sticks out, and that looks bad. So it's quicker and easier for me, and I've been liking the audio just fine. So I've been using the TX660s and just clipping it either into the pocket behind the boutonniere, or if they have like a decorative pocket piece, or a sneaky place is like underneath the tie on top of the second button. So you just find places to hide it, but that one's a nice one. It also captures the bride as well if they're actually doing vows or if they're doing a reading to each other. So again, that was something I found for me was good enough audio and simple and just quick and easy. And then I have those two recorder sticks on me all day, and if anyone's talking, I clip it on them or get them to hold it, and I interview people. So I've used that. In addition to this, I'm recording right now on the Osmo Pocket 3. I've been playing around with that and this DJI transmitter. So that's been pretty fun for interviews too. So again, you're just trying to find equipment that works for you, but audio is huge for that. So number one key, just trying to get your audio as close as you can to the speaker, to the mouth. And if you can get that source close, then it's, even if there's like, you're in the middle of the party, you're at the bar and you're getting messages, if the person's holding the mic here, then you're going to get great audio then. And then if you want to step it up a next notch, buy a audio recorder, like a Tascam X6 or Zoom F3. These are XLR recorders that you can plug into the DJ's mixer, and then that way you get audio directly from the wireless mics. So that's kind of stage two, but I don't think you need that just yet if you're a photographer starting out, or if you want to start video and want to keep your kit small as you start to invest. I think 2 TX660s will go so far in so many situations, from commercial to weddings. And just let me finish that thought off because my mind is running. For the DJ mixer, you're plugging the audio recorder in, but I'm also taking, again, the TX660s into this like rubber sleeve, like this rubber band that hugs the microphone, and then it's like right here, so then when they're talking it's nice and close, and even if the recording from that wireless mic into the DJ mixer, if something happened or the DJ added some effects or did something crazy, peaked your levels, the recorder that's on the mic is in close proximity, so it's going to capture great sound as well. And a lot of times I actually like using that one because you get ambient noise, you get a little like the laughter and the commotion, and that again feels more real and home video to me. So sometimes I like having that bit of that atmosphere in there. Okay, so frame rates, let's see. So the editor, the frame rates, thinking about lenses, stabilization. Then just kind of little offshoot things to think about is understanding white balance. Typically, you're going to white balance to the lights that you're shooting. If you got a lot of mixed light, if you're inside, it's got really, really orange tungsten lights, and there's big windows with the daylight coming in, you're going to get this like mix of orange and blue, and so you have to mess around with your white balance to level things out so that the whites look white, or you make a choice and make it warmer or cooler, depending on what you want to do. But that being said, if you shoot photos and you're doing auto white balance and you're switching over to like a video for a quick clip, either figure out if you want to shoot and lock your white balance or have your white balance jump around. That's up to you, but typically you want it to be locked into something, so that way as you're shooting your light, and that might change as far as like what's bright, what's not, and you got to figure that out on the fly. But that's easier to correct than if your white balance is jumping all around. It goes like blue and kind of yellow, and then all this, it's gonna be held to color grade. So it's nicer if it's just one tone, and then you can start to add some, fix that in post, right? Color correct that. And then, yeah, I don't know if I said it, but let me say it again, with the idea of photo versus raw, like raw photo versus video. Video doesn't have as much latitude, so you pretty much got to nail your focus in camera. I think I did say that before, but I just wanted to emphasize that again. That's the biggest difference. So then as you're shooting a scene, if lighting starts to change, you have to be really well versed in your gear and what you want to do to be able to adjust that lighting right away. So imagine you're inside and like the bride is backlit by a window. If all of a sudden walks around you, or you come around her, how do you quickly switch so that now she's back into a decent exposure and not overblown? So it's, again, because things are moving and you're holding a static, or not a static, but you're holding a sustained shot for longer than you would a photo. Photo is just a quick moment, right? This is like a sustained thing. Well, if you start to move with the subject or the subject moves, you have to adjust your settings quickly to make sure that they're still visible, that they're still clear. So yeah, it's all these little micro choices and decisions all the time. And that actually leads into decisions. So when you're thinking about a scene, how do we think about the scene? And I think this is probably the last component you can probably use for now, and I think that's enough. I've rambled quite a bit here. But it's like when I'm doing a wedding, it's like I take the day in chapters. So let's say I arrive at the hotel and the bride's getting ready. Okay, I've arrived. How do I show I've arrived to a place? How do I show the place, and what is happening, and what's the meat of that story, and then how do I exit? And so when I was working with some of the photographers, that was one question that kept coming up. She was like, one of my students there was like, well, can I get some, like, and I provide this anyways, but basically some practice footage so that they can wrap it all together. So I'm giving them a bunch of raw, and it's going to be 2 scenes so that they can play around with it. And it's going to be an interesting thing to try, where I want them to put together a sequence and then we can watch my sequence. But it's the idea of like, okay, I'm going to give them 2 scenes from getting ready into the first look. So how do we do that? So a simple way is this framework or this cheat sheet. You just go detail, 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 kind of the meat, what's happening, exit. So there was one, we're talking about Sarah and Eric, they're at a Godrich wedding. So drone shot reveals it's the cottage, the lake, and the cottage is beautiful and everything. So we're showing up top and how kind of expansive it is, and just it's by the water. It's such a beautiful sunny day. Then we get into, shots of details of the cottage, kind of the rooftops a little bit, and sort of the lights and the driveway and just flowers and just things like that, leading into then details in Sarah's room and her room where she's at. And now you're kind of looking at her from outside of the bathroom a little bit, so kind of from afar, and then we get a little bit closer and she's just kind of touching up some makeup and earrings and hair. And so that's where it goes details what's happening, right? And the details are sort of this idea to build interest and alludes to what's to come, and that's always been a nice framework. And so just a lot of details always gives context or gives more interest. So I would say always just grab as much detail as you can, and like I said, those little Lego pieces, and then we can figure out how you build your Lego project after. And then from there she's ready, and then I actually interact. I ask them how they're doing, we break the fourth wall a little bit, and then it gets into she sees her mom and dad, they do a first look together, they have a moment, and then the girls, they're silly and I'm playing off their energy, so we were like getting them to flex, and just we were joking around and goofing around a little bit. They see Sarah, and then it's this awesome moment with the girls, and then I think Sarah had a bit of a thread right on her bum off her dress, and so the girls were like messing around with it, and then like we're just making fun of that. So I liked that it went from like this slow tension build up, and you feel like something's about to happen, it's kind of emotional, and then we break that tension with the comedy, with the light relief. So I'm always looking for that, the kind of the mix of both emotions, kind of a light-hearted but meaningful, and that's my style, that's my thing. And so as you're shooting, you'll figure out what you like to do and what you're looking for. And then from there, how do we transition outside? Because like for me, that tension moment was cut with the thread, and then we show outside from inside. So then now it's like, it could be we're looking from inside, we're looking that out to the tent and the dinner area outside the window. So then we go outside, and then there's like more details, and then this one leads into, I believe, Eric, he's standing there, he's waiting. So there's like details of his attire and his hands, and it shows kind of the nervousness. And I think there was a point where it was fun because the girls were kind of looking outside through the window, so they were kind of being silly, and so then I grabbed a bit of that. And then from there, it kind of shows you the feelings, the emotions of the moment. And then Sarah comes out and they have a big thing, and that's like a long sustained like 10-minute clip where I just zoom in, zoom out, but I'm just kind of holding my spot. I'm not trying to get too fancy. I just want to see the moment play out and let them have their moment. So I'm trying to be aware not to be too close either. So yeah, so that's kind of a nice formula if you don't know how to start and end a story. But then that method I do over and over and over again. And obviously that sort of is like a fundamental safe framework and safe shots. But then as you get into the edit, you'll find other ways to jump from one thing to another, or maybe if you're lucky, they're talking about something and it connects to another moment in the day, or something that happened, you can B-roll to that. So you'll get better and better at that but to start, if that's a nice framework for you, just think of that. So it's details, the core of what's happening, how do we exit? And so that's what I told Dylan this morning, and I told some of the people that I've been working with, is like practice around your house. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but this is what I do all day. Now that I'm a new dad, I'm always looking for these little mini moments, and I'm trying to like have really great video of Millie and our lives. And so it could be just making breakfast. Where does that start? Show the main happenings of making breakfast, and then it ends with us eating and being silly or something like that, or I put together Millie's little RC, like the kind of like the car that she, I don't know what they're called, but just basically the cars that the kids can sit in with the battery pack, you know what I mean? Like the big ones. So like I remember getting that, and then doing shots of details of what was in the box, and then I'm putting it together, and then it ends with like Millie and I taking it out for a little cruise, right? So there's always mini stories in everything and little scenes. And so I think if you can start to train your brain to see that, that's the next step of like changing your mind from like photo to that. But the beauty is once you get that and you're starting to see the world or your projects or the stories that way, apply that to your photos. That makes your photos even better too, because then now you're telling the same story, but you're like, how do I tell it in just a still? and it makes it a lot more fun, more interesting, and then I don't know, more artsy, I guess, right? Which is the intent. It's like, let's create, let's put some thought behind our creations. Once you understand that, then when you start to get into different types of video, that's where things are different, right? So over the time, I have a whole basically repository of a bunch of different gear, because especially more audio gear now, because sometimes clients want to do an interview style, but maybe I don't want to see the mic. That requires maybe a boom mic overhead. Or maybe they do want to see the mic, they want to see a podcast style. So now I got a couple podcast mics that I use, and I've been really loving playing around different mics. But then you also need redundancy. So maybe you do need a lav mic, or maybe you need a wireless mic, because you always want two sources of audio. That's something I didn't say earlier, with the weddings especially. Always two sources of audio no matter what you're doing, because what if you finish filming this whole thing, or you capture a whole wedding, and then that audio source crapped out, or that recorder, or that whatever you were using for audio ran out of battery. So there's so many things to consider, but always two sources of audio just in case. But yeah, so that's for me is like, once you have the basics down, then as you start to get hired for certain gigs, or you need to do certain types of video, then that'll dictate the gear you'll need, right? If you're doing in-studio product videos, that requires much different gear than if you were doing weddings, or if you were going to go do expeditions and like crazy National Geographic stuff, right? Like just like photography, same thing. Like those are different needs. So I would start the basics first, and then as you get gigs, or as you want to experiment more and figure out what you like, then you can invest in gear. Try not to, and this is me talking to my younger self, try not to get caught up in buying too much gear, because sometimes when we don't know what we want, we think we need to buy everything just in case we need it, or you think you don't know, so you think you'll make you better in some way. But what really makes you better, or is just getting out there and doing it, and getting experience in doing it, because as you shoot, you might come across something different. Maybe just you don't know what you don't know yet, right? So maybe then you're like, the stabilization, okay, this is really shaky footage, let me figure out how to fix that. It's like, then it's easier to Google or YouTube one fix for one problem, rather than being like, maybe starting at everything, be like, how do I understand all of this immediately? Or take a look at other people's work and go like, I wonder how they got that shot, kind of analyze that, or try to see what gear or lenses they're using, as inspiration, not as like you need it. Because the beauty of video is like, if you can tell a great story, you don't always need the best gear. If you look at, like, for example, Casey Neistat, so many of us love his work. And is it that same cinematic quality that you see other YouTubers use? No, he's still using the same gear, which is interesting, right? But it's just the way the lighting, the lens choices, and the thing is, his videos are very strong because it's also such a great story base, right? He's such a great storyteller that he can do it on his iPhone. It doesn't matter. And I actually took his course, and he shot most of it on iPhone. And in that course, it's like, I didn't learn anything technically that was like going to make me better. But what I loved about it, not technically in the sense that technically making me better, but technically as in like using my gear. But what did make me better is I just loved hearing him explain what he's looking for, seeing how he's approaching different scenes. So that made me better, right? So that's why I'm trying to find time to do more of this, like just talk and just also breakdowns of my projects. Although my projects aren't like anything crazy, I think they're just very good use cases for anyone just wanting to become a freelancer and make money in this world of, make money with your camera kind of idea, a content creator, whatever you want to call this. So just switching back to business then, let me finish off with this and just some quick thoughts. So to give you context, or maybe I should break this up into two videos. So I think this is good enough for video as a starter, and I'll make that part one, and then part two, so check for that. It's going to be just about the business side of things and being a freelancer and how to go full-time, and just kind of what thoughts, kind of brain spill on that. Okay, so I'm going to catch you in that part two.
Test drive? Promise you won't share the password? Switch to Bell Pure Fiber, Canada's fastest internet, awarded by Ookla.